Welcome, dear listener, to a cozy corner of history. Picture yourself stepping into a bustling medieval inn, a place brimming with life and a touch of mischief. The ale here might be a bit bold, perhaps a tad strong for our modern tastes, but it's poured with a grin. And the beds? Oh, they've got character aplenty, creaking and groaning as if they're telling tales of their own. But don't worry, they're softer than they let on. Please consider leaving a like or a comment as we head into the Wayfarer's Rest. Thomas wasn't born an innkeeper. He stumbled into it like a man tripping over a root in the dark. It began in a bustling inn in York, where a shrewd woman named Edith ruled with the precision of a queen and the thrift of a miser. Her establishment was a marvel. Every guest fed, every penny counted, every spill mopped before it stained her reputation. Thomas, then a young wanderer with more ambition than coin, watched her like a hawk studies prey. This, he thought, is a trade worth learning. He lingered there for months, hauling barrels and scrubbing floors, soaking up the art of innkeeping through sweat and observation. When he returned to his hometown, a ramshackle tavern on the road to nowhere caught his eye, the Wayfarer's Rest, a name grander than its sagging roof suggested. He poured his meagre savings into it, along with a heart full of stubborn hope. The early years tested him. Leaks sprang faster than he could patch them. Guests grumbled louder than the rats in the cellar, and the ale barrels seemed to attract more vermin than customers. Yet Thomas endured, hammering nails, brewing batches and charming the surly into staying. Innkeeping, he mused, wiping sweat from his brow, is like forging iron, hot, messy, and you're bound to get burned. Today the inn stands as a cornerstone of the town, a testament to his grit and a stage for the daily drama of medieval life. The Wayfarer's Rest sprawls like a village stitched together with timber and grit, a chaotic blend of necessity and improvisation. At its core lies the great hall, a cavernous belly where long oak tables bear the scars of meals, brawls, and the occasional drunken surgery. Last month, a pilgrim's tooth was yanked out with a spoon after too much ale. The central hearth roars, a beast of flame and smoke, its fumes drifting toward a hole in the thatched roof. It's a design that keeps the hall warm, but sometimes turns it into a haze so thick Thomas wonders if he's running an inn or a smokehouse. The floor, strewn with rushes, crunches underfoot, trapping dirt, spills, and the odd chicken feather or dog bone. Nothing says home like straw in your boots, he thinks, sweeping each morning, debating whether the rushes are worth the hassle. Next to the hall, the kitchen buzzes like a battlefield, its air heavy with the scent of simmering pottage and baking bread. Open fires blaze beneath iron cauldrons, tended by Agnes and her assistants, who dart about dodging sparks and each other's elbows. The storage rooms and damp cellar hoard the inn's treasures. Barrels of ale, sacks of grain, and wheels of cheese Thomas guards like a dragon hoards gold. The cellar's musty dampness is a fair trade for security, though he often jests, if mould were wealth, I'd outshine the king, and smell worse. The stables, a stone's throw away, are the inn's pulse, housing horses, donkeys, and the occasional ox or stray goat that wandered in from who knows where. Their earthy stench, hay laced with manure, wafts through the courtyard, a pungent reminder that travellers and their beasts keep the place alive. Upstairs, the chambers range from the communal rooms' straw mattresses, where privacy is a myth and snores are a chorus, to private rooms with creaky beds and bolted doors. These cramped, draughty spaces are a luxury by medieval standards, reserved for nobles or merchants willing to brave the bedbugs for a bit of solitude. Thomas's quarters, tucked behind the kitchen, are a study in simplicity. A sagging bed that groans like an old nag, a desk buried under ledgers and quills, and a window letting in just enough light to tease him with the world beyond his duties. A small herb garden out back yields sage, thyme and mint for cooking and cures, while a well provides water fresher than the town's questionable river. But the inn hides secrets too, a concealed cellar beneath the hall, known only to Thomas and a trusted few, where fugitives or illicit goods might hide when the taxman's nose gets too close. And in the stables, a false wall masks a passage to the woods. A relic of lawless days Thomas keeps ready, just in case. Thomas stirs before dawn, his breath a faint cloud in the chill of his chamber. The inn never fully sleeps. Horses snort, guests snore, and the wind rattles the shutters like a restless spirit. His joints creak as he rises, a nagging sign that innkeeping is a young man's dream he's stretched into middle age. Another day, he thinks, another chance to keep this creaky ship from sinking. He starts in the stables, checking each beast to ensure Will hasn't left them hungry or saddle-sore. The lad's there, moving at a pace that suggests his mind's on market day maidens rather than hay. "Slower than a cart in mud," Thomas grumbles inwardly, though he'd rather keep Will's loyalty than trade it for speed. Next, the kitchen, where Agnes stirs a cauldron with a scowl that could curdle ale. The pottage smells promising today, leeks and a hint of bacon, but Thomas knows it's a gamble. Tomorrow might bring turnips past their prime. The great hall awaits last, its tables a battlefield of last night's revelry. Ale stains, crumbs, and a chicken bone he swears wasn't there yesterday. He sweeps the rush-strewn floor, plotting the day's chaos like a general before a siege. Thomas may steer the inn, but his staff keeps it upright. Will, the stable boy, is a wiry 15-year-old with hair like a bird's nest, and a heart that drifts toward town girls faster than a hawk spots a rabbit. His loyalty outweighs his laziness, though Thomas muses, "If I could bottle his daydreams, I'd sell them as a cure for insomnia." Agnes, the cook, is a tempest in a smock, her kitchen a fortress where she rules with a ladle and a glare. Her meals are the inn's pride, her temper its terror. She'd scare off a dragon, Thomas thinks, stepping lightly when she's wielding her spoon. Her assistants, Joan and Bess, flit about like sparrows under her hawkish eye. Joan, quick-fingered and sharp-tongued, dreams of her own kitchen someday, while Bess, meek and steady, chops onions and prays for peace. Mary, the serving girl, is the inn's hidden gem. At 18, she's got a smile that could melt a knight's armour and a memory that recalls every guest's name and quirk. Thomas relies on her to tame the hall's chaos when he's elsewhere, thinking, "If I need a spy, Mary's my pick." Then there's old Ned, the handyman, whose repairs collapse like a house of straw. Last week, a bench gave way under a merchant, sending him sprawling into the rushes. And Lila, the laundress, washes linens and spreads gossip with equal vigour, claiming she once scrubbed a king's sheets, or at least a man who looked regal. By mid-morning, the hall hums with guests, a tapestry of medieval life unspooling before Thomas's watchful eyes. A Flemish merchant, purse clinking like a bell, haggles for cellar space for his cloth. He'll learn dampness costs extra, Thomas thinks, pocketing the coin. Pilgrims bound for Canterbury chatter of saints, their dusty cloaks a badge of faith, though their light purses test his patience. Faith's free, he muses, but beds aren't. Lady Isolde, a noblewoman swathed in silk, sweeps in with demands, fresh linens, hot water, silence. Thomas bows, hiding a sigh. Silence in an inn? She'd have better luck asking the wind to hush. He gives her the best room, still draughty, and hopes she leaves soon. Locals trickle in, swapping tales of failed crops and bandit rumours, while a hooded stranger lurks, eyes darting like a fox in a henhouse. Trouble or just bad stew? Thomas wonders, marking him for scrutiny. Sir Reginald, a knight with rusty armour and taller tales, boasts of slaying dragons and rescuing maidens. Thomas doubts he's fought anything fiercer than a hangover, but his coin spends well enough. Then there's Master Geoffrey, a scholar drowning in scrolls, spouting theories about dragon mating or lost alchemy. He once dipped his quill in a chamber pot, turning his history into a stench Thomas still laughs about. The midday meal is a storm of clattering bowls and hungry hands. Pottage, the inn staple, is a daily dice roll, rich with leeks one day, a grim slop of fish and turnips the next. Food enough to fool the starving, Thomas thinks, watching guests dig in. Bread, crusty and warm, saves the day, paired with cheese or butter for those with spare coin. Ale flows freely, brewed to a hearty middle ground. Too weak, and they'd riot. Too strong, and they'd torch the place. Wine, a noble's treat, costs Thomas dearly, but earns him favour. Chaos spices the feast. Once, Agnes swapped herbs for a love potion, turning the hall into a tangle of serenades and awkward flirtations. Thomas still blushes at his own fleeting fancy for her. Another time, a juggler's torch lit the stables, leaving a singed bale and a week of smoky nightmares. Accidents, he grumbles, are for the rich. I'm not. The inn's roots are murky, tangled in tales Thomas half believes. Some say it was a Roman way station, others a Saxon mead hall. He reckons it was just a shack someone slapped a sign on. Its past brims with drama. A highwayman hanged from the courtyard oak, a fire in 1287 that nearly razed it, a ghost, Lady Elspeth, said to wail from the upper rooms. Thomas scoffs until a midnight cry sends him double-checking bolts. He rebuilt it from ruin, turning a wreck into a haven, brick by stubborn brick. The Wayfarer's Rest anchors the town. Harvest feasts fill it with song, lean times make it a refuge. It's a makeshift court, a matchmaker's den, a news hub. On St. Crispin's Day, a raucous contest of strengthened ale draws all, though Thomas frets over broken benches. The Lord's tacksman looms, preachers rant, but the inn endures, a thread in the town's rough weave, as vital as the church or market. One day, a band of town urchins swapped the ale barrel's taps with honey, turning the hall sticky and the guests furious. Thomas chased them off with a broom and a grin. The love potion fiasco lingered too, a tale of chaos he now milks for laughs. Through it all, the Wayfarer's Rest stands, a rickety kingdom where Thomas reigns, ever plotting to keep it afloat amid the medieval mess. Thomas's days at the Wayfarer's Rest were a relentless gauntlet of woes, each more absurd than the last. Take the merchant from the north, a man whose girth suggested prosperity, but whose dramatics rivaled a Moorman's troupe. Stricken with fever, he moaned as if auditioning for a saint's martyrdom, prompting Thomas to stash him in a cramped room that doubled as a graveyard for broken stools and moth-ravaged blankets. If he expires, Thomas mused, scratching an itch that mocked his efforts. At least the bedding's already doomed. In a medieval inn, disease spread faster than a bard's ballad about a two-headed calf, and burning the bedding was as futile as sweeping the wind. Might as well torch the place, he thought, and call it a cleansing. Taxes gnawed at Thomas like a persistent rat. The Lord's collector, a weasel-faced man with a ledger thicker than his skull, slithered in with a smirk that could sour ale. "Prospering, are we, Innkeeper?" he'd sneer, his quill poised like a dagger. Thomas handed over a purse of coins, his grin as genuine as a wooden shilling. "Prospering enough to keep your lord's hounds fed," he thought, swallowing a retort. Taxes were the bedbugs of commerce, unavoidable, irritating, and always biting where it hurt most. Thieves, meanwhile, were a plague of a different sort, skulking through the inn like rats with nimble paws. Last month, a ferret-faced guest absconded with a silver candlestick, insisting it was his grandmother's. Thomas let it slide. Chasing petty crooks was a fool's game when the inn was bursting. Better a lost trinket than a lost patron, he reasoned, though the sting lingered like a splinter. Then there were the guests. Dice games turned into brawls, with two louts squabbling over who cheated first. "Take it outside," Thomas ordered, his tone steady as a millstone, "or you'll be mopping the floor with your pride." They shuffled out, egos more battered than their fists. Innkeeping, he reflected, is herding cats, drunken, armed cats with no sense of direction. The absurdity didn't end there. A farmer once accused Thomas of watering down the ale, demanding a refund and a grovelling apology. With the patience of a martyr and the guile of a fox, Thomas offered a special reserve, the same ale with a drizzle of honey. The farmer left, smug and tipsy, while Thomas smirked. A little sweetness fixes most fools, he thought. Then there was the minstrel, who smuggled in a goat, claiming it was his muse. The beast chewed a tapestry, bleated through the night, and left gifts on the floor. "The goat goes, or you both do," Thomas declared, and the minstrel departed with a theatrical huff. "Next time," Thomas muttered, "I'll charge for livestock." And who could forget the local lord's son? A brat with a tantrum for every whim, he demanded the best room, rare wine, and a bath strewn with rose petals. Thomas provided the first two, but balked at the petals. "Roses are for poets and madmen," he thought, "not spoiled lordlings." The boy sulked, but Thomas stood firm. If he wants coddling, let him join a nunnery. Through it all, Thomas endured, a stoic amid the storm. Innkeeping, he mused, requires a stout heart and a stronger stomach. Order at the Wayfarer's Rest was a tightrope act, with Thomas juggling chaos like a jester with flaming brands. Strangers crammed into the hall like herrings in a barrel, and tempers flared faster than straw in a thunderstorm. His rules were ironclad, weapons surrendered at the door, locked away until departure. "No blades, no cudgels, no sharpened spoons," he'd say, his gaze unyielding. Disputes went outside or nowhere. "Settle it in the fields," he advised, "where the cows won't judge." Theft earned a swift boot. "Steal from me," he warned, "and you'll bed down with the pigs." His broad shoulders and calm stare often nipped trouble in the bud, though he'd summon the constable for the worst offenders. Better the law's wrath than a mob's, he thought. Music and tales kept the mood light, until a lute-strumming fool sang of cuckolded lords, nearly sparking a riot. "Stick to harvest songs," Thomas growled, "unless you fancy a pitchfork chorus." Ale was doled out with care. Too much turned merriment into mayhem. When mercenaries smashed a table in a drunken spree, Thomas banned them for life. "A week's coin for a lesson in manners," he sighed, "but worth it for the quiet." Fire loomed as a silent foe. Embers could turn the inn to cinders. Buckets of water stood ready, and Thomas eyed the thatch like a hawk. One spark, he mused, and we're a bonfire with no feast. Vermin and sickness were relentless, medieval hygiene a jest in itself. Thomas fought them with what little he had, though he knew it was like bailing a sinking ship with a spoon. If cleanliness were gold, he thought, I'd be a pauper still. Vigilance was his shield. One slip could unravel everything. Innkeeping, he reflected, is dancing on a blade's edge. The wayfarer's rest was no mere stopover. It was the town's pulsing heart. Merchants stashed goods in the cellar, damp walls be damned, and haggled in the hall. Thomas charged steeply for the privilege. Damp cloth has character, he'd quip, pocketing their trust along with their coin. The inn doubled as a market. Fish, beer, wool, all traded under its roof. On market days the courtyard bloomed with stalls peddling cakes and questionable tonics. Thomas skimming a cut from each deal. Commerce, he thought, flows through me like ale through a drunkard. Pilgrims spun yarns of holy relics, their tales growing taller with each mug. The saint's toe cured my limp, one bragged, limping still. Locals swapped gossip, old Meg claiming she'd danced for a king, though Thomas reckoned the king was either blind or soused. Stories, he mused, are the currency of souls. As a councilman, he settled squabbles, planned feasts, and greased trade deals. A pact signed in his hall last month had merchants cheering and drinking. A full tankard makes for full coffers, he noted. A rival once whispered that Thomas's pottage was rat-flesh stew. With a dry laugh, Thomas served him a bowl of the finest broth. Taste the rodent, he said, watching delight replace doubt. The rumours died, and a foe became a patron. The inn, he thought, is where lives tangle and coins jingle. The inn swayed with the seasons, each a verse in its endless song. Spring bogged the roads with mud, a respite for repairs. Time to mend what winter broke, Thomas thought, patching and plotting. Summer roared in, a flood of travellers, taxing every beam. The inn hums, he said, and my bones groan. Autumn's harvest feasts drew locals for games and gluttony, Thomas raking in fees. They revel, I profit, he observed. Winter hushed the bustle, the inn a warm cave for the hearty. A time to dream, he mused, and count the stores. Feasts like Christmas brought cheer and chaos, holly-draped halls, rare boar, and spilled wine. Merry till the mess, he grumbled. A May-Day revel saw a lad topple from a maypole into a trough, the crowd howling. Clean water's wasted on fools, Thomas sighed. A solstice play by Mummers, featuring a dragon cow, left him chuckling. Half-baked mirth beats none, he thought. The inn bent with each season, a sturdy reed in time's wind. Thomas straddled power's edge, a councilman yet a servant. The Lord's steward, a profit-hungry vulture, pecked at his earnings. Hawk's circle, Thomas thought, dodging deftly. Sir Reginald, a knight with extortionate airs, demanded a protection fee. Thomas offered ale and a fireside seat. The constable protects me, he said coolly, sending the knight off in a huff. Respect's not a toll, he mused. A bishop's envoy sought free rooms for monks, getting draughty beds and turnip-heavy stew instead. Piety doesn't pay, Thomas thought, feigning regret. A royal messenger with soldiers drained his stores, but Thomas bowed. Coins cheaper than my neck, he reasoned. Each encounter was a game, hospitality laced with grit. Authorities, he reflected, are guests with sharper teeth. Thomas's arsenal was humble, but vital. The hearth, a smoky beast, warmed and cooked if it didn't choke you first. Fire's a fickle friend, he thought. Tankards and spoons, dented relics of countless nights, bore silent witness to revelry. The ledger, his shield against tacksmen, was a tangle of scribbles. Numbers lie less than men, he reckoned. A stout broom swept away the day's sins, spills, crumbs, and the odd goat dropping. Tools, he mused. Keep the chaos at bay. Thomas's inn was a speck beside legends. The Tabard Inn birthed Chaucer's tales. Thomas envied its fame. My pottage won't inspire verse, he sighed. The Mermaid Inn whispered luxury, though likely overstated. 4 posters don't kill fleas, he thought. The Angel Inn thrived on college coin, a stability he craved. Dreams don't pay rent, he noted. The Green Dragon hid smugglers' secrets. Mystery's fine, he mused, if it's not my cellar. These giants cast long shadows, but Thomas carved his own tale, one goat at a time. By the hearth, ale in hand, Thomas weighed the day. The merchant's moans, the collector's sneer, the brawl, all routine, all draining. Tomorrow's more of this, he thought, and I'll meet it. Innkeeping was a mantle he bore with pride, shelter in a cold world, a flicker of fellowship. To us, he toasted silently, spinning the wheel one mug at a time. Yet the fire's glow stirred darker musings, life's brevity, the inn's creaks a mirror to it. We're all wayfarers, he pondered, locking up for the night. Raise your glass to Thomas and his ilk, medieval unsung stalwarts. Their hearths lit a stormy age, their legacy in every inn today. Imagine the wayfarer's rest, fires snap, voices hum, mugs clink, drift into its tale, where history breathes, and every innkeeper's wry smile weaves the world's fabric. Sweet dreams, and may your road find a warm welcome. In the year 1300, where every coin is a hard-won prize and every ledger a battlefield, there exists a dance as old as time itself, the tax collector and the innkeeper. One, a servant of the Lord's coffers, cloaked in duty and suspicion. The other, a master of hospitality, spinning chaos into coin with a smile and a sharp eye. Theirs is a duel of wits, where numbers meet necessity, and trust is as rare as a clean chamber pot. Our tale unfolds in the Wayfarer's Rest, a bustling inn perched at the crossroads of trade and pilgrimage. Here, Thomas the innkeeper juggles the demands of travellers, locals, and the ever-present threat of ruin. Enter Sir Reginald, the Lord's tax collector, a man as meticulous as he is mistrusted, his ledger a weapon sharper than any blade. What begins as a routine collection spirals into an audit, a clash of duty and survival, and, unexpectedly, a glimpse of common ground. This is not a tale of heroes or villains, but of 2 men bound by their roles, each a cog in the great wheel of medieval life. So, settle by the hearth, listener, and let the smoke and clamour of the inn draw you into a world where even the sternest of men might find a flicker of grace. The door of the Wayfarer's Rest swings open with a creak, and in strides Sir Reginald, his boots thudding on the rush-strewn floor like a judge's gavel. His cloak, a deep green velvet, billows behind him, catching the light of the hearth and casting shadows across the hall. A silver clasp at his throat gleams, a mark of his station, and his moustache, neatly trimmed, frames a mouth set in a line of perpetual disapproval. In his hand, clutched like a holy relic, is his ledger, its pages thick with the ink of countless reckonings. The hall hums with life, merchants haggle over bolts of cloth, pilgrims murmur prayers over their ale, and a minstrel tunes his lute in the corner, oblivious to the storm that has just entered. Thomas, wiping a tankard behind the bar, catches sight of the collector and feels his stomach knot. Tax day, he thinks, the Lord's favourite holiday. Sir Reginald surveys the room, his sharp eyes missing nothing, the full tables, the laughter, the clink of coins changing hands. Prosperity, he mutters, yet the ledger tells a humbler tale. He approaches Thomas, his stride deliberate, and the innkeeper forces a smile, handing over a purse of coins with a bow that's more habit than respect. Well enough to keep your lord's coffers full, Thomas says, his voice steady, though his mind races. Sir Reginald's smirk suggests he's unconvinced. Prosperity suits this inn, the collector replies, weighing the purse in his hand. Yet your taxes seem modest for such abundance. His gaze lingers on a group of well-dressed merchants, their laughter loud, their purses heavy. Thomas swallows. Trade's fickle, sir. One day a feast, the next a famine. But Sir Reginald's eyes narrow, and he taps the ledger with a gloved finger. Perhaps, he says, but the Lord expects accuracy. I'll be auditing your books, Innkeeper, tomorrow. The word lands like a gauntlet thrown, and Thomas nods, his smile tight as a bowstring. As you wish, sir. The inn is at your service. As Sir Reginald turns to leave, Thomas exhales, the weight of the audit settling on his shoulders like a yoke. Another dance, he thinks, and I've 2 left feet. The next morning, Sir Reginald sits at a corner table, the ledger spread before him like a battlefield map. The hall is quieter now, the dawn light filtering through the shutters, casting long shadows across the floor. His quill scratches parchment, a relentless march through columns of numbers, each figure a potential trap. Thomas approaches, wiping his hands on his apron, and sets a mug of ale beside the collector. For your troubles, he says, though his eyes flick to the ledger, scanning for danger. Sir Reginald nods curtly, his gaze fixed on a line marked miscellaneous expenses. This entry, he says, tapping it with his quill, is rather generous. Care to explain? Thomas leans over, feigning nonchalance. Ah, that. Roof repairs mostly, and a tithe to Father Ambrose. He blesses the inn, keeps the demons at bay. Sir Reginald snorts, a sound like gravel underfoot. Superstition, innkeeper? I deal in facts, not fables. Thomas shrugs, his smile thin. Facts are fine, but a blessing's cheaper than a new roof. The collector's eyes bore into him, searching for cracks, but before he can press further, a crash echoes from the kitchen. Agnes's voice, sharp as a blade, berating Will for some mishap. Will, you oaf! That's the last of the leaks! Thomas seizes the excuse, darting away to quell the storm, leaving Sir Reginald to his suspicions and the cooling ale. Alone, the collector frowns, his quill hovering over the page. There's more here, he thinks, but I'll find it. Duty demands it. Yet, as he sips the ale, rich, earthy, a hint of malt, he feels a grudging respect. The man knows his trade, he concedes, even if his numbers are slippery. Over the next few days, Sir Reginald becomes a fixture in the inn, his presence as constant as the hearth's glow. He watches the ebb and flow of life at the wayfarer's rest, his ledger forgotten for moments at a time. The hall bustles with travellers, pilgrims bound for Canterbury, their cloaks dusty, their eyes alight with faith. Merchants from Flanders, their voices a cacophony of tongues and tempers. Locals escaping the grind of the fields for a mug and a tale. Mary, the serving girl, flits through the crowd, her smile a balm to weary souls. She offers Sir Reginald a fresh ale, and he surprises himself by asking after her mother, who's been ill. Better, sir, thanks to the herbs you sent, she says, her gratitude genuine. He nods, his face impassive, though a flicker of warmth stirs beneath the surface. Will, the stable boy, stumbles past, a bucket of water sloshing onto Sir Reginald's boots. The collector kneels, mopping it up with his kerchief, and Will gapes, expecting a reprimand. "Careful, lad," Sir Reginald says, his voice gruff, but not unkind. The inn's lively enough without a flood. Will scurries off, bewildered by the mercy. Later, a spat erupts between two merchants over a dice game, their voices rising like a storm. Thomas steps in, his tone calm but firm, and the men subside, grumbling but compliant. Sir Reginald watches, impressed despite himself. He's a shepherd, he thinks, and this is flock, wayward but loyal. The inn struggles mirror the town's own, damp cellars, rowdy guests, the constant spectre of ruin. Sir Reginald's stern mask slips as he sees Thomas's burdens, so like his own duty to the Lord. Perhaps, he muses, we're not so different, both servants to greater masters. At dusk, as the sun bleeds gold across the sky, Thomas steps into the herb garden for a moment's peace. There, by the sage and thyme, he finds Sir Reginald, charcoal in hand, sketching the inn's crooked chimney against the fading light. The collector starts, his face flushing, but Thomas peers at the drawing, its lines capturing the building's weary charm. "You've a gift," Thomas says, his voice soft with wonder. Sir Reginald shrugs, smudging the charcoal with his thumb. "A hobby," he mutters, "nothing more." But Thomas lingers, and they fall into talk of the countryside's quiet beauty, the way the light gilds the fields, the hush of the woods at dawn. For a moment, they're not collector and innkeeper, but men sharing a fleeting peace, their roles forgotten in the twilight's embrace. As the stars prick at the sky, Sir Reginald tucks away his sketch, his voice low. "Beauty's a rare coin," he says, "and we spend it too quickly." Thomas nods, the audit a distant shadow. "Aye," he agrees, "but it's worth the price." The audit's end looms, and Sir Reginald presents his findings, a few barrels of ale unlogged, a festival's chaos blurring the numbers. Thomas braces for ruin, his mind racing for excuses, but Sir Reginald's tone is measured. "A small fine," he says, "and a word to the Lord for fairer rates. Duty needn't crush a man." Thomas blinks, gratitude mingling with shock. "You'd do that?" he asks, his voice hoarse. Sir Reginald nods, his gaze steady. "I serve the law, but the law should serve the people, not break them." The words hang in the air, a bridge across their divide, and Thomas extends his hand. "Thank you," he says, and means it. The collector clasps his hand, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "Keep your books cleaner," he chides, "or I'll be back." Thomas laughs, the tension breaking like a storm's end. "I'll try," he promises, "but chaos is my trade." As dawn breaks, Sir Reginald mounts his horse, his ledger tucked away, his duty done. Before he rides off, he hands Thomas a rolled parchment, a sketch of the inn, its lines a testament to their truce. "Keep it safe," he says, his voice gruff. Then spurs his horse down the road. By the hearth, Thomas unrolls the drawing, studying the inn's crooked charm, the ivy's sprawl, the smoke curling from the chimney. "Even hawks have souls," he thinks, tucking it away with a smile. The hall stirs to life, and Thomas hides the good ale for next time, a quiet toast to an unexpected friend. And so, in the world of the Wayfarer's Rest, where every guest is a story and every coin a struggle, two men found a sliver of grace. Sir Reginald, the collector, rode back to his ledgers and laws, but with a lighter heart. Thomas, the innkeeper, returned to his chaos, but with a new ally in the shadows. For in the end, Even in a world of taxes and toil, beauty and mercy find their way, like light through a cracked shutter. And that, dear listener, is a tale worth remembering. The great hall of the Wayfarer's Rest was a microcosm of medieval life, its oak tables scarred from years of spilled ale, hasty deals, and the occasional drunken brawl. The hearth roared, its smoke curling toward a hole in the thatched roof, which Thomas often cursed as a fire hazard masquerading as ventilation. Rushes crunched underfoot, hiding crumbs, bones, and the odd chicken feather. Proof that cleanliness was a dream for richer men. The inn's stables housed horses and the occasional stray goat. Their earthy stench, a reminder that travellers brought both coin and chaos. Upstairs, chambers ranged from communal straw pallets to private rooms with creaky beds, where bedbugs waged their own nightly raids. Thomas's own quarters, tucked behind the kitchen, were a Spartan affair. A sagging bed, a desk buried under ledgers, and a window that mocked him with glimpses of a world beyond his duties. It was here, amid the clatter of mugs and the crackle of the hearth, that the bandits first appeared. 5 men swaggered in one evening, their mismatched leather jerkins and mud-caked boots marking them as men who lived by the road's rough code. Their leader, a hulking brute with a nose broken so often it resembled a poorly set bone, demanded ale, meat, and rooms with a voice that rattled the rafters. His companions, scarred and sinewy, scanned the room like hawks circling a henhouse. Thomas served them himself, his smile as tight as a miser's purse strings, noting their daggers, their swords, and the way their laughter carried an edge sharper than their blades. Over the next week, the bandits became unwelcome regulars, each visit more brazen than the last. They gambled loudly, cheated at dice, and when they lost, accused others of foul play, their hands straying to their weapons. They flirted with Mary, the serving girl, with a leering familiarity that made Thomas's jaw clench. They taunted Will, the stable boy, until he hid in the hayloft, muttering about their cruelty. Even Agnes, the cook whose temper could curdle milk, bristled when they haggled over her pottage, claiming it was fit for pigs. Thomas watched it all, his instincts prickling like a hedgehog, sensing a fox. These men weren't just trouble. They were a storm brewing, and the village was in its path. The storm broke when the bandits turned their attention beyond the roads. A farmer found his cart overturned, his grain sacks slashed and stolen. A widow reported her savings, meagre coins hidden in a clay pot, taken at knife point. The blacksmith's shop was ransacked, his tools scattered like bones after a feast. Whispers turned to shouts, and fear settled over the village like fog. Guests at the inn dwindled, travellers opting for longer routes to avoid the danger. Locals, once eager for ale and gossip, now hurried home at dusk, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. Thomas's ledger grew leaner by the day, each empty table a silent accusation. If this keeps up, he thought, I'll be serving stew to the rats. The village council convened in the inn's private room, a cramped space smelling of damp wood and last night's stew. The miller, hands dusted with flour, spoke of his grain stores raided. The blacksmith, his voice like iron, recounted his losses. Old Ned, the handyman, spat into the fire and declared, "They're not just bandits, they're vultures picking our bones." Thomas, leaning against the wall, felt the weight of their stares. The local lord was away, his garrison with him, and the constable, a man whose courage had long been outpaced by his age, offered little hope. "We're on our own," Thomas said, his voice steady but grim. "If we don't act, they'll strip us bare and laugh while they do it." That night, as Thomas lay in his sagging bed, the inn creaking around him like an old ship, an idea took root. The bandits were greedy, their eyes gleaming at the mention of coin. The inn, with its hidden passages and secret cellar, was a labyrinth they didn't know. And the villagers, though no warriors, were stubborn as oxen and twice as cunning when pushed. "We'll give them what they want," Thomas thought, a wry smile tugging at his lips, "and make them regret it." The next morning, he gathered his staff and a handful of trusted locals: Mary, whose sharp eyes missed nothing; Agnes, whose kitchen was a fortress; Will, young but agile; old Ned, who knew the inn's secrets better than anyone; and Lila, the laundress, whose gossip network rivaled a king's spies. The blacksmith and miller joined, their anger outweighing their fear. "We're going to set a trap," Thomas said, his tone as dry as week old bread. "These bandits think they're clever, but they've never tangled with a village full of folk who've survived worse than them." The plan was simple yet devious, born of desperation and a touch of mischief. Thomas would spread word of a wealthy noble arriving at the inn, carrying a chest of gold to buy land for a new manor. The rumour would be too tempting for the bandits to resist. Mary, with her knack for charming even the surliest guests, would drop hints during their next visit. The chest, placed prominently in the great hall, would be a lure, but its contents would be far less pleasant than gold. Preparations began in earnest. Mary wove the tale with the skill of a bard, casually mentioning the lord from London and his heavy chest of coin while refilling the bandits' tankards. Their leader, his broken nose twitching like a hound scenting blood, leaned in, his eyes gleaming. "Gold, eh?" he muttered. "That'll fetch a pretty price." Thomas, polishing mugs nearby, hid a smirk. The bait was set. Will spent the day rigging traps in the great hall, buckets of water balanced above doors, floors slicked with kitchen grease, and loose floorboards that would give way under a heavy step. "If this doesn't work," he muttered, "I'm running to the next shire." Agnes, in her kitchen, brewed a special batch of pottage laced with valerian root and a pinch of henbane, enough to make a man drowsy and disoriented, though she swore it wouldn't kill them. "Tastes like regret," she said, sampling a spoonful and grimacing. "Perfect." Old Ned, his hands gnarled but steady, showed Thomas the hidden passage from the cellar to the woods, a relic from the inn's shadier days. "If they try to bolt," he said, "we'll cut them off here." Lila's brother, a beekeeper with a grudge against thieves, provided the final touch: a hive of angry bees, sealed in waxed cloth inside the chest. "They'll sting anything that moves," he warned. Thomas nodded, thinking, "Good, let them dance." By dusk, the inn was a fortress disguised as a tavern. The chest sat in the great hall, its locks gleaming under the candlelight, a siren's call to greedy hearts. The villagers waited in the shadows, armed with pitchforks, brooms, and a fierce determination to protect their home. That night, the bandits returned, their numbers swollen to 8, their confidence bordering on arrogance. They pushed past Thomas, their leader demanding to see the noble's room. "He's not here yet," Thomas lied, his voice smooth as polished wood. "But he's due any moment." The bandits settled in, drinking heavily and laughing louder than ever. Thomas served them Agnes's pottage himself, watching as they shoveled it down, oblivious to its secret ingredient. Hours passed, and the herbs began to work their magic. The bandits' laughter grew sluggish, their eyes heavy, their movements clumsy. But before they could succumb entirely, Will's voice rang out from the stables, high and urgent. "The noble's carriage! It's coming!" The bandits snapped to attention, their leader barking orders. "Grab the chest. We're gone before they know what hit us." 2 of them hefted the chest, their comrades forming a loose guard, swords drawn. But as they crossed into the great hall, chaos erupted. The first bandit triggered a tripwire, sending a cascade of flour down on him like a ghostly shroud, blinding him as he coughed and cursed. The second slipped on the greased floor, his legs flying out from under him, the chest crashing to the ground. The impact shattered the waxed cloth, and a swarm of bees exploded outward, a buzzing cloud of fury that stung anything in reach. The bandits screamed, flailing at the insects, their formation crumbling. One tripped over a loose floorboard, landing face first in a puddle of spilled ale. Another, swatting at bees, stumbled into a bucket of water that doused him from head to toe. The third, reaching for the chest, was engulfed by the swarm, his shouts drowned out by the hum of wings. Thomas gave the signal, and the villagers sprang into action. Agnes and her assistants emerged from the kitchen, wielding rolling pins and skillets like weapons of war. Will released a flock of geese from the stables, their honking and flapping adding to the pandemonium. The blacksmith and miller led the charge from the courtyard, their pitchforks gleaming in the moonlight. The bandits, disoriented and stung, fought back with waning strength. One was felled by Agnes's skillet, crumpling like a sack of grain. Another was tripped by a goose and pinned by the miller's bulk. A third found himself locked in the privy by old Ned, who cackled as he turned the key. "Enjoy the accommodations," he muttered. The leader, seeing his men fall, made a break for the back door, his sword flashing. But Thomas was ready. Emerging from the hidden passage, he tackled the brute, sending him sprawling into the mud. A swift kick to the ribs and a well-placed punch to the jaw ended the fight. "You're not going anywhere," Thomas said, his voice as dry as the dust on his boots. By dawn, the bandits were bound and gagged in the cellar, their bravado reduced to muffled curses. The constable, roused by the commotion, arrived with a cart to haul them away. "Well done, Thomas," he said, scratching his head. "Didn't think you had it in you." Thomas shrugged, surveying the wreckage, broken tables, spilled ale, and feathers floating like snowflakes. "Just another day at the inn," he said, his tone suggesting he'd rather be herding cats than bandits. "Though I might raise my rates after this." The villagers gathered in the courtyard, their faces flushed with triumph. For the first time in weeks, laughter echoed through the wayfarer's rest, a sound as warm as the hearth's glow. Thomas allowed himself a rare smile, thinking that innkeeping was a perilous trade, part juggler, part general, part fool. But with a village at his back, even the darkest threats could be turned into tales worth telling.